just wanting a tune-up, wanting to, just get things, make sure things are good. Or if you're even going through some challenges in your marriage, this can work for you. So we just really encourage it. It's research-based, there are biblical principles there as well, and it's practical. You take this assessment and it gives you like a snapshot of your relationship with your partner at that point, your areas where you kind of agree and you're seeing eye to eye, the areas where you see difference. And what facilitators like Jenny and myself do is just guide you through a series of conversations on different aspects of your relationship and allow you both to prayerfully consider how you can make the best of that side of your relationship. Mm-hmm. So if you're interested in it, by all means check out the website. If you're interested in going through something like this with us, we're certainly available to do that, and you can reach out to us and we can talk about details and stuff. Mm-hmm. But yeah. One
more recommendation, and I promise we're done. It's called 8 Dates by John Gottman. Yes. Actually, awesome. Anything by John Gottman, but if you are starting to date someone, that you can start that right away. Yes, it's called 8 Dates. It leads you through very important questions, but it's also fun.
Mm-hmm. It's a book.
It's a book, yeah, and it outlines 8 dates you have with somebody and things you can talk about. It's like conversation starter type things, but better. Mm-hmm.
And so just for context, John Gottman is and his wife Julie. They are basically have spent their lives literally scientifically studying relationships and marriages. So these aren't just like a cool self-help thing. This is stop share.
Yeah, but there's no cursor again.
Okay, you have to exit out. But yeah, this is literally science research-based conversations that produce really good things to discuss if you're having a relationship.
Yeah. So for all of you, all of you do 8 dates. Yeah. All right. Thanks very much, guys.
Pastor John and Jody, thank you guys so much. I think I got a few messages. There was someone that wanted to ask a question on something that you mentioned about EP. So we'll just take that quickly, and then we'll have a special item by Emma from Woodbridge. So Emma, if you can get ready. Anna, I think you had a question.
Yes, I did. Thank you both so much for this wonderful presentation. You guys were wonderful. So my question had to do with sort of the high EQ comment that you mentioned before. I wanted to know if you guys had any opinions on sort of men having high EQ and then that being sort of a way for them to maybe have better relationships with women who are, dedicated to like their own professional success or are a little bit more ambitious. So I kind of wanted to hear your thoughts on that. Thank you.
Yeah, do you want to comment on?
Definitely. If a man has a higher EQ, then he's going to be able to handle a relationship with a successful woman, because a high EQ helps you to be able to, basically the idea is that you are able to manage your emotions.
Yes.
You're able, first of all, you can know your emotion, step one, which you'd be surprised how many people don't know what they're feeling.
This guy?
Yeah, he had no idea. I had to tell him, oh, honey, you're feeling sad right now. What, am I? He really didn't know. So, you have to know what you're feeling, and then you have to be able to express what you're feeling in a positive way. I mean, these are tough things to do. And then you have to be able to communicate. If the other person you have to then be able to have empathy for the other person's feelings and listen to them and reflect back. So, I mean, it's a tough thing. So that's why we kind of said, at least find someone who is on that train.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess what you're saying is for someone who's like pursuing a profession is trying to find someone who maybe is not threatened by that, or who is able to be supportive without who's able to, because part of relational aptitude in a man is being able to let your wife influence you. That's really hard for some men to do. So is he okay with you influencing him? And in the relationship, so yeah, 1000%, that's important.
And obviously, EQ, like IQ, is just good. So, like men, women, it's good to have it. But yes, there are some relationships that based on, and like Jenny said, in some ways we're still trying to discover this, whether it's, biological or whether there are some cultural factors, probably like with most things, it's a bit of both. But there are like higher the degree of difficulty relationships where, the roles of husband and wife are not as traditional, and the kind of life that you live means that you have less room or bandwidth for disagreements and things of that nature. If you are a high-flying professional person and you're traveling a lot for work, and you don't have hours and hours and hours to like talk through stuff. So that's not to say that you can't have a successful marriage, but it does mean that you probably, like you're suggesting, you're looking and praying for somebody who is kind of operating on that level. Just randomly, I just love the person who's made their name Schrodinger, and my question is, if you show your face, will it change fundamentally the nature of what you are? That's just a.
I have no idea.
It's just a very, very niche.
But I'm sure.
joke.
Yeah.
The Schrodinger's cat thing.
I don't know.
This has gone far too geeky. Let's get back to the topic at hand. All right.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Eugene.
Hey, thank you guys so much. I think there's a lot of things that you said that we can all apply, even some of us folks that are married. But before we actually get into the panel discussion and just have, just so there are lots and lots of questions that a lot of you have been submitting throughout the week that the panelists have as well. But before that, Amma Aduse is going to give us a quick special item, and then we'll just go into the second part of our program. But Jody and John, thank you so much again. Thanks for being with us again.
Okay, hi everybody. Happy Sabbath and good afternoon. I'm going to be singing a song in Tree. It's called Madonsna. Okay. Madonsna Yenchenha. Motaiko Echichi. Maya Fasunje Eni J. Na Tridia Ponashaya Abrivia. Na Yasano Ejmasa Yeda. Modonsna. Na Tridia Ponashaya Abrivia. Maya Sano Ejmasa Yeda. Modonsna. So Bufua Kayeni Jidaro. So Riverua Kayeni Jidaro. Modonsna Yenchenha. Motaiko Echichi. Modonsna Yenchenha. Na Tridia Ponashaya Abrivia. Maya Sanu Ejmaswa Yeda. Modonsna. So Bufua Kayeni Jidaro. So Riverua Kayeni Jidaro. Modonsna Yenchenha. Motaiko Echichi. Modonsna Yenchenha. Na Tridia Ponashaya Abrivia. Maya Sanu Ejmaswa Yeda. Modonsna. Amen.
Amen. Amma, do you mind, just because there may be some folks on here who don't understand Tree, do you mind just quickly just giving a quick summary of what you just sung in English, please?
Okay, so it's basically saying let love stay within all of us, let love and peace and unity stay within all of us, and let all evil feelings, jealousy, and all that go away. And yeah, if you're ever mad or sad, just remember all those happy days, to help us feel better through, so that we can get through, especially times like this, to also remember the happy days, and that everything will work out well for us.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. And with that said, sorry, apologies. I think I muted myself by accident. With that said, we're just going to go straight into our panel discussion.
Yes. Welcome once again, everyone, to our afternoon panel discussion. Before we introduce our guests and our panelists for this afternoon, just want to go over a few housekeeping items. The first thing is, if you do want to speak, if you use the raise your hand feature that comes with Zoom, you'll be able to find that by looking at participants, and there should be the option to raise your hand. There are folks that are monitoring the chat, so they'll alert us to when anyone wants to speak, so kindly use that feature. If you want to ask your question, that's the way to do it. If you want to send it through chat, there are two options to do so. There's an Ask Me 1 and Ask Me 2. One of them is being monitored by Michelle Ofori and the other Hilda Radu. So they will also have the questions there and read it out loud when we do call on them to do so. So if you want to send your questions to them, please do so. If you want to send it to us privately as well, you can do that as well in the chat box. Also, please kindly mute yourselves if you're not speaking. And as well as if you do speak, please state your name, where you're from, and your church as well, so we all kind of get to know each other as we're going on throughout the afternoon. So without further ado, we're going to invite our first couple, Ken and Deb. Welcome. Can you tell us a little bit about your story, how you guys met, how long you've been married for?
All right. I think I'll talk. Hi, I'm Deborah. It's Ken. That's my husband. We've been married 2 years in August, coming up now. So whoop whoop. I haven't killed him yet. I'm originally from Michigan. I don't really claim Virginia yet, but we live in Virginia now. We go to the Woodbridge Church. Ken grew up here, so this is his home church. A little bit about our story. We met actually through a mutual friend. My husband had gone on a mission trip with a young guy at North Bronx Church, which is where I used to be in New York. And I guess they had met and they became friends. So Joseph, that's his name, Joe comes up to me one Sabbath after church and goes, I think you and Ken would make a really great couple. And I was like, wait, who's Ken? We already knew of each other because we're in the same community, you know? So I mean, because of NAXDA, we kind of have met before, or had we met before? No. We had never met, but we knew of each other. So he tells me, I think Ken, and I was like, wait, which Ken? And he shows me a picture, and I open it up on my Facebook, and I go, oh wait, I know this guy. And I think I'm older than him, because I tend to think I'm older than everybody. So I just shut that down real quick. And so I guess he goes back to Kennedy and talks to him. The following Sabbath, he comes back and he goes, you're not older than him. And I really do still think you guys would make a great couple. And I'm like, probably not. So I shut that down again. And then he comes back the following Sabbath and he keeps doing this. So finally he goes, I want to give him your number. Is that all right? And I go, sure. I mean, at this time I had been single for about a year. He's saying to let y'all know he had no idea Joe was doing all of this. I'm pretty sure he did, but he's saying he didn't. But anyways, so I give him my number, and Kennedy texts, I think it was a text, right? Yeah, it was a text. So I actually remember I was getting out of work. I stepped onto the curb and my phone dinged, and I looked and it said, hi, this is Ken. And I go, who? And he's like, Kennedy. And so we started to talk. And really, that's I guess they say, how it began, and we're here now. Dated for about a year and a half. and then we got married.
Thank you for sharing your story. Our next couple is Adjoa and Bright. Welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome. Could you tell us a little bit about your story, how you met, and how long you've been married for?
Okay, first of all, we've been married for 1 year. Well, my wife says 1 year, 7 months.
I knew he wouldn't get it right, so I had to.
Yeah, and we dated for 4 years before we got married. But then I thought I had seen her from afar quite a number of times, but she hadn't seen me, or probably in her mind I never existed.
Well, that was
Her big sister was a good friend of mine when I was doing my undergrad in Ghana, and we had a youth program on campus, and she came. At that time, she was just a teenager. She had just finished high school at the time. I saw her. I liked her though, but then I inquired from her friend and realized she wasn't available. So years passed by, and I think that was when we were in second year. So when we finished school, her sister's graduation, the family showed up again. I went there purposely because of her. I went, I tried to kind of pick up a conversation. I wasn't that successful. Fast forward a few months later, we went for Adventist Youth Congress in Ghana, in Addis Ababa College. And I'd seen her around and been trying to get closer, but it was as if I wasn't existing. So one day we went for lunch at the dining area. Her big sister, who is my friend, was part of the kitchen staff. So after eating, I went there just to talk with her. Then Adjoa came over and was like, "Oh, Educhumwa doesn't know of the big sister. I forgot my cutlery. Can I have cutlery?" And I was like, "Oh, mine is handy." So I quickly just cleaned it up and gave it to her. But just before she left, and I told her that I wouldn't have time to wait for her to finish up with her lunch. I'll be going to the dormitory, so when she's done, she should please bring it to the dormitory. Hoping that she would actually come around so that, kind of pick a conversation and relation from there. Then she told me that she was sorry, but she's not sure she would actually remember my face if she came to the dormitory. And I was like, "Come on, I'm just here, just look into my face while you remember." So then I told her to kind of pick my number and call so that she could bring it over, but she declined. So I wasn't successful then. But then 3 years later, my best friend was coming to Chicago, and his flight got canceled. So I was at work, he gave me a call that flight got canceled. He ended up at my apartment. I was on night duty, I closed so tired, went back to the house in the morning, trying to take a nap. Then he got a call. And Adjoa's family was inviting him over for dinner that evening. And he was like, "Bright, they are inviting me for dinner, but I'm quite shy, although they were family friends. And that if I was prepared to go, then he would tell them that he was going to come. But if I was not prepared to go, then he wasn't going to go." I was so tired from work, so I told my friend that, "Look, I'm not sure I can make it." I went back to sleep. But just a moment, it clicked that she could be there. So I asked him, "Is Adjoa going to be there?" He said yes. "Oh, tell them we are coming." So we went to the house, received us nicely. Then in the course of the conversation, her dad apologized that he saw the place was so warming that he couldn't put on the air condition because the lights were out and his generator wasn't functioning. So then my friend just bet out, "Oh, Bright is an electrical engineer." And the man was like, "Then today you need to fix my generator." Boy. So we went to where the generator was. I tried all I could. The generator wouldn't start. So then we came back to the living room, and Adjoa's mom was like, "Bright, in order to protect your reputation, I've got another device which is not working, so can you help me with it? I fixed it, it worked. Then the father called his technician, and the technician said, well, the process, what I was trying to do earlier is the same thing, so you should just allow me to try again. We went there, I tried again, it worked, and everybody came to give me a hug. And the big sister told the father, and the father was like, so what do I do to say thank you? And the big sister said, you can give him one of your daughters. And here we are today, married. Yeah, it's quite a long story, but I have to cut it short. Yeah.
No, thank you. Thanks for sharing, but it's lucky you won your wife.
Yeah.
So our next couple is Jason and Linda. Hi, Jason and Linda. Can you guys tell us a little bit about yourself? How long have you been married?
Hi, everyone.
Hi.
You gonna go, babe, or should I?
You can go, but tell the right story, please. Like, make sure it's the correct story, otherwise I'll take over.
There's only one version. All right, so I'm Linda, and this is my husband, Jason, and we've been married coming up to 14 years. Coming up to 15 years. Coming up to 15 years in a few weeks. We have 4 children, and we've been together for about 24 years. So our story is not as glamorous as some of the ones that we're hearing. We simply just met at church at a very, very young age when we were about 16, 17. We fell in love and we're just still going strong. And that's it, really. I don't know what you want to add.
You have to add who liked you first.
He clearly liked me first.
No, that's not true. The truth is she saw me and she liked me. And then obviously I had to do 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, you know. And here we are. But yeah, 15 years of marriage, 4 children, 23, 24 years of being together. And we're still going strong.
Wow. It's a lot to unpack there, right, guys?
Our next couple is Christy and Ellen. Kindly tell us a little bit about how you guys.
All right, so I apologize for that. We tried to be good Christians and invite our friends on the line, and unfortunately some of them are knuckleheads. So
woo woo, go Crosby and Ellen.
Yay! All right. Kindly mute your phone. Thank you. All right, so our story starts in, I guess I'll start back in Sacramento. So I lived in California for a little while, and I came out one Christmas to visit my parents in Maryland and attended a youth congress. And while I was there, I remember the person was talking, and you know, as a lot of those youth congresses go, it was all about we're not here to find people, we're here for God and all that. And I was with my boy, and I was like, well, I don't know what they talking about, but while I'm gonna be here, I'm gonna be looking. So when I said that, I turned around and happened to see her a couple rows behind me, and I was like, oh, who's that? So that weekend, you know, I kind of lightly stalked her a little bit, and had a friend of mine introduce her to me. And she really only told me her name and what church she was from. And I'll keep a long story short. Suffice it to say, the troops were mobilized. It was a group effort. My father is much better at the game than I am. And while I was still in California, things were happening on the East Coast, hallelujah. And so by the next year, when I got back here, there was an arrangement for me to go to that church that she was at. And my father was a pastor, and so he was preaching there, and the connection was made. When I met her, I told her that we had met before, and what did you say?
I just said I don't remember you.
She didn't remember who I was. So after that, I remember it was like right before New Year's. And I remember that New Year's, when the ball was dropping, I just prayed to the Lord, and I was like, God, you know, I think this is the one. I should mention, yeah, when I actually got back to California the first time I met her, I told one of my boys that I had met my wife. And he was like, do you know who she is? I'm like, nah. Do you know anything about her? Nah. But she's gonna be my wife. And so I prayed about it that New Year's Eve and said, amen. It's gonna be. And so I ended up calling her. You talk about the 1-2-1-2 she put on me. You know, I had to be a little persistent. But finally, we actually did get to talk and kind of let her know who I was. And I told her, yo, I've seen you a couple times. I'm interested in getting to know you better. And what did you say to that? You remember?
There's nothing wrong with getting to know new people.
Yeah, that's a real welcoming statement right there. But
baby, that's for the East Coast.
We ended up talking for like, what, 4 or 5 hours? And we're together ever since. So you want to add anything?
He was a stalker, but the grace of God convicted me. No, but pretty much that's the whole story.
Group effort, hallelujah.
All right, thank you, Greg, for sharing a little bit of your story with us. So last but not least is Pastor Jonathan and Jody. Can you guys tell us a little bit about yourselves and how long have you been married?
Yes. Okay.
Still here.
She's still here. She's just off screen. Yeah. So we met in South Korea, and we were both out there doing mission work. I had, come out probably about 6 months before that, come out of a long-term relationship, and that had some toxicity. And even though the person was a great person, but so I kind of came to a place in my own walk with God where I was like, you know what, I'm not looking for relationships right now. I'm just going to focus on God and myself, and So I make the big profession, leaving and go to South Korea, and then basically 2 months later, because we used to get new teachers that came through every 2 months because that's how long the terms were. So we had a couple of new teachers come to our school, and Jody was one of them, and she came in to where we were eating. We were all, in typical Korean fashion, tradition, I should say, Korean fashion, you sit on the floor and eat on sort of low tables. So we were all kind of sat around the table at one of the pastor's homes who was connected to our English school, and she came in, and it was like, oh wow, new teacher, great. And for some reason I feel like we sat next to each other, or maybe we were across from each other. But anyway, we just started talking, and I was just being a good missionary and just sort of explaining the ropes to the new missionary, just helping her to know, like, here's where you go for food, here's where you eat and stuff like that. And I remembered my time when I first came, because you go out there and it's very generous, like they put you up and stuff and there's a small stipend, but in the beginning you have like zero money. And so I said to her, listen,
generously offered to bankroll.
Listen, if you need some money, to get a few things this month, I've got, don't worry about that. And which is an offer I made to all other missionaries.
You did not.
Did not. But anyhow, so that was that. So like that first week, and in my mind, because in my mind I was like, I'm still committed to this promise that I've made God, I'm not looking at anyone, whatever. So this first week, like, pretty much from then on, we were always together. We didn't teach the same classes, but between classes we were always talking. At lunch we were always talking. Like, so that whole first week, we were just a lot talking and learning about her life in Alabama, her learning about my life in England and stuff. And then the first weekend, we as teachers decided to take a new group of teachers out for on Saturday night, for a meal or whatever, welcome to Korea and whatnot. And so we all went out, a group of like 10 or 12 of us. And the really strange thing kept happening, which is we would be with the group, and then we would look up, and the group was either way in front of us or way behind us. Like we kept getting disconnected from the group, lost in our own conversation. And we had a meal, we had fun with everyone, and then it was time to head back to where we all, like the area where the school was and where we lived. And we had stayed out past the time of the last train, which I don't know if that's something that our Maryland folks, do you guys have any sort of a
tube subway network. I don't know if that's a thing, but certainly the London folk will get that. So so their underground basically had stopped running. So the only way to get back was that we had to get a taxi, but our Korean was non-existent. But we had one Korean American friend who was still with us, and me and Johnny, like a couple other people, and
Too many details.
we had too many details. We had to get in a taxi. Please, we had to get in a taxi.
Yes.
The taxi
There were
was
a lot of people.
there were a lot of people, too many people. The taxi was called. It was cramped space, and so I did the Christ-like thing, which is I said, listen, if you're kind of uncomfortable in the taxi, if you just want to lean your head on my shoulder, because of your neck alignment and stuff, that's totally fine. You know what I mean? I am down for that mission sacrifice life. And honestly, in the moment, it wasn't really, like, I wasn't trying to be smooth, like I legitimately meant it. But as soon as she did it, I realized I'd made a terrible, terrible mistake. As soon as her head hit my shoulder, I was like, okay, that feels much more interesting than it should if we're just being strictly missionaries here. And so we got home, and I went to bed, and I woke up the next morning, and I was like, the thought was in my mind, like, this is the woman I'm going to marry. And then I immediately spent like 6 months repenting and penanting to God, like, I'm so sorry for like breaking. So poor Jodie had to live with, like, one day I was like really into her, and then the next day I'd like woken up early and prayed. So I was like, I'm not talking to that. Get thee behind me, Satan, I'm on my mission.
Yeah, it was a lovely.
And eventually, after realizing that God was not answering my prayers, I started to wonder, well, maybe this was indeed the real answer to my prayers. So then we started like officially having a relationship, and there's been
Almost 12 years.
awesome. Well, it's 12 years of marriage this year, but we've like been knowing each other for like, I can remember, 15. So not quite as good as Jason and then
John and Jodie. No, thank you guys for sharing. So as you can tell, we have, our panelists have been, all of them have been married for a different number of years, but they all have a lot of experience, and obviously they've all found their partners, and so they have experience in that. So this week we sent out a survey, and many of you submitted lots and lots and lots of questions, which we know we're not going to be able to get through all of them. We've given our panelists some that they've had a chance to look through. We're going to try and, just take a little bit of time to go through them, and then we'll go through some more of the survey questions. If you do have questions that have come up either during the initial presentation or as the panelists are talking, please just submit them to the Ask Me 1 or Ask Me 2. If you also want to make a contribution, just please raise your hand, and at some point we'll just acknowledge you to do that. So right now we're just going to start with the questions for the panelists.
So the first question is for Ellen and Chrissy. The question reads, what are some of the qualities I should be looking for when choosing a life partner? What are some of the qualities that you both look for when you were choosing one another?
Yeah, so I think Pastor Burnett and his wife did a good job of really laying out a lot of them. So maybe we'll go through ours real quick, and then maybe talk about qualities that we saw in each other.
Right.
You want to give? So what we did was she put her list together, I put my list together, and inevitably they were different. And so, do you want to read your list first?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I have just a few things together. And again, this is, since most of us here are all either Adventist Christian, I would say most of us are Adventist Christians. And so when looking for the women looking for a man, one of the first things that you should be looking for is a man who's very much committed to Christ, right? That should be the goal. That's what you want, a man who's committed to Christ, because marriage itself, for between two spiritually mature people, are very challenging. So to add the additional burden of being married to someone who is not in tune with Christ, or have someone who has a relationship with Christ, it just makes it more difficult. Another one is you have to be attracted to the man, right? Ladies, sis, be attracted to the man. I can't even go any further than that. You want a man who can also lead boldly, a servant leader who can actually, someone who can display those things. You also want a man who will display love sacrificially. I think for us women, when we see a man who can do that, it's very much attractive to us. We also want a man who can model genuine humility, and of course, a man with integrity. I mean, if you see that the man is even telling little lies or even stretching the truth a little bit, you would know that's not somebody I probably want to spend the rest of my life with. Sorry.
It's okay, we understand.
Yes. Okay.
Huh? What's going on?
No, they were saying they understand. All right, so that was my 6 top ones, but I'm sure there are more.
Yeah, so she stole one of mine, so that's okay though. But see, I was trying to not be so, all Adventist and Christian and all of it, but I have one in there.
Oh, it's called cliche.
I'll just get to that one real quick. A person who actively seeks God, right? So let's just put that out there. She covered all of it, that's fine. The one for me that I think goes across a lot of facets is a person who's willing to grow. Because if they're not willing to grow, you're gonna recognize very early on in your relationship that there are things that you either weren't aware of or things that are gonna come up. And if you don't have a willingness to grow either personally, professionally, spiritually, all of those things, I feel like that becomes a real challenge. So someone that's always, got, we talk about emotional intelligence, but just is always yearning to grow is really important. The one she stole from me was the attractiveness thing, because again, I'll just go ahead and say it. Like, let's not pretend. If you're not attracted, I know there are people who are like, well, they're just so nice personality and all that. That can only go so far after you've been married for a while. Believe me, your eyes might start wandering. So as a practical, you might want to just make sure that this is somebody that you're attracted to. And then finally, someone whose family and friends you can envision yourself being around. I bring this one up also just because you don't just marry the person, okay? You marrying the whole family. You marrying all of the people that come with him. Like my example, unfortunately, she married my friend Paul, who continues to disrupt us. All of those people come into the family. And so if there are conflicts there, not to say it's make or break, but you just want someone who isn't going to try to separate you from the people that you've known before or separate you from your family. Hopefully you can find someone who wants to integrate and love all the people that you love.
Right, and so I think the next question was, were we looking for those things when we were looking? And you know what, to be honest, as I was putting this together, I was just like, I don't think I really wrote down the list of things like, I need him to be attractive, he has to have this, I don't think I actually wrote all those things down. The one thing that I knew for me was very meaningful, and that was what I was seeking, was the man after God's own heart, like the man who really wanted to serve God, who knew scripture, Sorry, we have Mike, I have a question here.
No, it's okay, let him ask his question.
I think for me, that was the most important part, but God is so good in that, knowing that he knows our heart. He really knows what we need, what we desire as women, what we want. And that's why we say when we follow God, he gives us everything and even more. Although I didn't ask for a man of integrity, I didn't ask for a man of confidence, I didn't ask for all of that. Out of his grace, out of his abundance of his love, in his out of the power, the love that he has for me, I would say, he gave me that and even more. And so for us ladies, as we are searching for the right guy, I think the most important thing I could leave with you is that look for a man who loves God. Look for a man who really wants to know who this God is.
Or a person who loves God.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you guys so much. So does any of the other panelists have anything to add on what Kwesi and Ellen just spoke about? Okay, If not, we're going to go right into the next question. Andrew, I am right again, just briefly. So this question is on practical principles for great communication. The question is, what are some of the questions I should be asking my partner now as we are dating?
Okay, so first of all, we're going to look at the very important principles of having great communication in a relationship. And we need to understand that communication is a vital building block in any relationship. I mean, whether it's parent to child, friend to friend, husband and wife, it's very important. I mean, no two people become best friends when they've not been communicating over time. It doesn't happen. So one thing we need to bear in mind, or the first point I'll say, is that we need to be intentional about spending time together talking. I mean, it just doesn't happen. We need to be deliberate. We need to make time to talk. It doesn't have to take a problem or misunderstanding for us to engage, but rather we need to be deliberate. We need to make time out of our hectic schedule to talk. One other thing we also need to bear in mind is that we need to be given certain cues, or rather, let me say, we need to be given comments when we're having conversations. If someone is running through their day, telling you how their day went, you need to be saying stuff to suggest that you are paying attention, you are interested in what they are saying, and you would like to know more, you know? I mean, if you go like, you know, it sounds more like just hurry up and run through the day and let's just go on to something else. But when you go like, oh, you had ice cream with flavor, you know? Oh, where do you normally get your ice cream from, you know, and all that. It edges the person on to talk more. So sometimes for a number of couples, people go like, he's so dull, he doesn't talk that much, he's too quiet, so reserved. But you know, even the most reserved person has a best friend, you know. So if we try to engage the people more, they would have the encouragement to talk more. The other thing also is we should freely express positive feelings in a conversation. When the person realizes that when we're having conversations, you seem appreciative, you give positive vibe, you know. If the person did something really great, you commend them. They get the feeling that you appreciate them through conversation. If they did something, say heroic in one way or the other, either at work or anywhere, and you kind of commend them, it's like, wow, good job, you know. It makes them realize that you do appreciate them. Then they'll always be yearning to talk more to you. But then if the person is talking to you and realizes that you don't seem to appreciate who they are, I mean, the person gets more positive, comments or, you know, positive vibes from elsewhere than you, then their interest is actually going to wane in the conversation. So it's important to praise people. The little feats that they achieve in their daily lives, highlight them, praise them massively, flatter them, let them know they are important. One other thing is that we should be honest and open if we want our relationship to succeed. In our communications, we should be honest and we should be open. In the same vein, when we are discussing problems, or there are certain things that we have challenges with, and you want to bring it to the attention of the other party, you have to be honest and you have to be plain with the person. Sometimes the person might have upset you, you are angry, but then you tend not to open up and tell the person what he or she has done. So you realize that the person is giving you attitude, but you have no clue what you've done, you know, and it doesn't help in the relationship. All that is that it does is that it rather brings tension in the relationship. So it really doesn't help. But many a times during our conversations, if we want to bring other people's attention to what they might have done wrong, it's important that we make sure we have the right facts. It's also important that we take notice of when is the right moment to make our point across, to bring our point across to the person. Assuming the person came back from work so tired, so frustrated, they had such a bad day, and you're now going to complain and tell the person why you left the dishes in the sink without washing them. It's going to set things ablaze. So the timing is important. You need to be able to read the mood of the person. Yeah. Then one other thing also is when we have challenges and misunderstanding, we need to solve the problems quickly. There are some people, when they are angry with you, they just don't want to talk. But then when that thing drags and drags and drags and you keep on giving the other party attitude, the other party also begins to get upset and also begins to show anger towards you, Then before we realize, the very reason why we are actually upset with each other has fizzled out and we are just not on talking terms, and it has a relationship. So it's important to open up about our problems. In talking about our problem, let us be specific in our conversations. You don't generalize them. If the person dropped a glass, you don't go like, you are so careless, just like, oh, you could have been more careful the next time. Let's be specific. Let's not generalize it. Like, that's how you are always. You never seem to get anything right. When you do that, you are breaking the soul of the individual. The other thing also is that we should avoid reading the mind of the person. Sometimes, per your intuition or per the behavior of the individual, you may seem to have a clue as to why the person did that. But it's important you kind of ask the right questions for the person to speak to it, rather than just assuming these are the reasons why the person did that. Because when you do that, sometimes it can get the person infuriated.
If I can just ask you to run, because there are a few other questions that speaks more to what you're talking about. So if you can just add a few bits and then we'll come back to it some
All right, okay. And the last thing I'll say is talk to the problem or talk about the problem, but don't attack the person or the personality. Yeah.
So I'll just chip in questions you should ask your partner. If you guys are going to get serious and you see yourselves as potential married people, if I were to ask, what makes you feel like you can marry someone, everyone would say, most people would say it bottles down to love. But love is just one part of it, right? There are other things that you need to ask, and there are millions of them, but we'll just run through a couple of them. First thing is you need to know what is the place of God in their lives. I think Pastor Bernetta and Jody spoke about it. But assuming you got married and you found out that you want to tithe and the person's like, what's tithing? I want to go for midweek service. No, I only do divine service. It's going to get complicated. And I know you love the person, but it's definitely going to be a problem. Then also, I think another important thing is, what is the role of the husband or the wife, right? It's important to align these things before you get married, because someone may have very different ideas of who a husband is or what a wife is. Somebody's idea of a wife is someone who just makes the home and stays in the kitchen. If it's something that doesn't resonate with you, it's better to know before you get into the marriage. Do you have a family history of diseases or genetic abnormalities? Very important, because your offspring may be bearing some of these things, and they're going to be living with you. I know we love them, and I know it's mushy, but these are important questions to ask. Whether or not you want to have kids, how many kids you want to have, it's important. You need to find out and make sure that you're on the same page. What values do you want to instill in the children? How the person handles disagreements? How you can be better at communicating with them? And this is also my favorite, whether the person has any debt, like what's your credit score? And then how important is spending time with friends to you? And the reason I add this is that some people would be thinking that, hey, my idea of a typical day with my husband is we all go to work, we come back, we are in each other's arms the whole night, and we go to sleep. The guy, on the other hand, just wants to hang out with his guys. Now, if you don't align on this earlier, once you get into the marriage, you are probably going to feel very neglected, And it's important to know. So I guess the bottom line, we are done, but the bottom line is like there are important questions that you need to ask. And it's important that you keep them in mind now. Thank you.
Thank you guys so much, Adra and Roy. So we're going to take, there's been a few questions that have come from the participants. So we're just going to pause here before we continue with the questions for the panelists and ask, I think, Sam. Sam, can you unmute and ask your question? And this will take, like 2 points from 2 couples. So Sam, you can go ahead and unmute and ask your question.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Samuel. I'm originally from Toronto and currently worshiping with the Washington Ghanaian SDA Church. Thank you for all the panelists who are helping us today. I have a question about interracial relationships. And so I think I'll ask half my question to the Burnett's and then half to the rest of the panelists. So my question is, for the Burnett's specifically, what has been the advantages in your marriage due to having an interracial relationship? And if you don't mind also sharing what has been some of the challenges in your marriage from having an interracial relationship. And then hopefully the panelists, if you can relate to this, hopefully the rest can also maybe answer this question. How did you determine whether you would invest in seeking an interracial relationship or not?
Sorry. Samuel asked the question to us.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because
Hey.
we're experts.
Right, sorry. Hi.
So yes, absolutely. Like, go for an interracial relationship. I mean, what else? I mean, that's wonderful. I mean, I don't think that you should do that to the exclusion of whoever else God brings to you, but I would say that the positives to that have vastly outweighed any possible negatives that there were. I think that for us, it's interesting, you should listen to Jonathan's sermon today. Yes. I think that would be really helpful. North Shore, yeah, Chicago. He talked a little bit about the idea of race in general. It's kind of an interesting concept anyway, but I would say for us, the biggest positive and the biggest challenge has been more of a cultural thing than it has been a race thing. We have been very blessed. We've not come against really any kind of overt racial racism because of who we are. Like, there have been little micro things sometimes, like someone will assume we're not together, and that's upsetting sometimes. So we were sitting beside each other on the airplane, and the flight attendant comes over and says to me, because I'm in the middle, he's like on the aisle, and she's like, "We have another seat, like a few up here. You could be a bit more comfortable." And I was like, is it not obvious? Like, I was like all over him. I'm always all over him. I was like, a little closer. We're together. We'd like to stay together. And of course, I'm sure she felt very silly about that. And I want to assume that what she meant was, you can have more space because he's a big guy and not he's scary. But I don't know what she meant. So there's been a couple of things like that, but other than that, I would say, like the cultural things that we've learned from each other. Like, I have grown. I'm a totally different person, and that happens anyway in a marriage. But like, I have learned so much about the world and other people and other ideas and I would have never been exposed to that if it hadn't been for marrying Jonathan. Like, I'm just able to understand so much more, and I think he would say the same.
Same as well. Yeah, I think for us, you end up becoming like gateways into each other's world a little bit, which is amazing, but it also challenges some of your own presuppositions and stereotypes, which I always think is a good thing. So having a white Southern father-in-law.
Yes.
Is an awesome thing.
I'm from Alabama.
And it's probably not something that we could probably count on one hand the number of second generation West Indians who grew up in London in the Amethyst Church who have a white Southern father.
Like that's
It's
just
such a
the
beautiful
Venn diagram of that.
combination, though.
But then you learn things like those parts of, God's world touch in ways that they wouldn't otherwise. And so, I mean, we could in some ways talk for hours about that. So I'd say this. Let me add to this though, because I think this is important to be said. The context that we're in, etc. And without wanting to plug my sermon, I mean, in some ways, because it was talking about the scientific racism and the constructs of race and things of that nature, which feed into all of this. And there were laws and there's miscegenation and all that stuff. Okay, fine. There is a reality, which is changing maybe slowly, but there is a reality that I am aware of and was aware of, and passing for 6 months, as I mentioned before, about deciding are we going to be in this relationship or not, I want to be in a relationship or not, was having to make peace with the fact that for people who don't know us, especially my black sisters, me not being with a black woman is a politicized thing, and is something that feeds into maybe a true reality, but certainly how do I say this the right way? An idea that is prevalent within the culture, American culture, that's good, quote unquote, together, affluent, not that I'm affluent, but educated black men don't always marry black women because somehow the value of black women is not the same as the value of other women. And so that obviously is not true, but it is also true that many people have experienced that. So I think if you are in an interrelational relationship, you do have to potentially wrestle with some of those things that maybe are external to your relationship, but what does this mean, and am I prepared to live with the potential misunderstanding or etc. And that's an example. There could be others. But as a concept, there's certainly no reason biblically or psychologically or anything of that nature why.
It's wonderful. Like I said, the more difficulties are the cultural differences. Like, we don't have time now, but like when we planned our wedding, like just the different ideas of what things are based on food. Is it a big, huge thing with lots of food, or is it like a little thing with cake and nuts? That's a big difference, and you really got to work through that. It took us like a year. So, yeah. But other than that, absolutely, go for it.
Thank you. Okay, does any of the other panelists want to? I think I'll read before, Wesley, I see your hand, so let me read the other part of Samuel's question and then you can tackle it. So it was for the rest of the panelists, how did you determine whether you would invest in seeking an interracial relationship or not?
Yeah.
And then before you answer that as well, let me just tag on, because I think there was another question that was submitted that's in relation to this, and along the same line, it says, can you be pro-black and dating a non-black person? So they're kind of along the same lines, but go ahead, Chrissy.
But I did want to give my story, and I really want to piggyback off of, I think, what Jody said in terms of culture. And I'm only saying this because I know not all of us are Ghanaian on the line, but we're predominantly so. And Samuel, I know him from Toronto, so I'm gonna speak directly to what I think he's getting at. In that, culture is in the Ghanaian community. And so to answer this question, I think the way I would go about this is asking really, who are you and what do you want for yourself? And just like Jonathan mentioned,